Stingray really was a submarine which could go to great depths. This is how they discovered a race of
The GOAT. The gold. Listen up, because I'm about to tell you about a piece of television history that most people have completely forgotten.
so different. And so we did an underwater series which was called
In 1964, a guy named Jerry Anderson made history with a show about a submarine crewed by puppets.
Pressure compensators on.
Reduce speed to cruising.
Reduce to cruising.
Stingray was the first British television series ever filmed entirely in color.
To America, we saw color television for the first time, and we were just staggered, amazed.
Not the first puppet show, not the first kids show, the first anything. The BBC was still broadcasting in black and white. ITV was still broadcasting in black and white. And here comes Jerry Anderson with marionettes in a submarine.
So it was a very slow and a very, very expensive, wonderful color system.
Shooting everything in gorgeous, expensive color because he was selling to American networks, and Americans wanted color. And the show wasn't just a technical milestone. Stingray was legitimately beautiful. Underwater adventure with a sleek, futuristic submarine that looked like nothing else on television.
Rate 1.
Stingray launch, stage 1 complete, sir.
Exotic undersea civilizations, gorgeous miniature work, actual drama and romance between puppet characters. The show ran for one season, 39 episodes. It was successful. Audiences loved it. Critics praised it. And then it just ended. Not canceled, just done. Jerry Anderson wrapped it up so he could move on to his next project, something called Thunderbirds. Maybe you've heard of it. Now, most people who know anything about Jerry Anderson assume Stingray was just a stepping stone, a minor work in the catalog, the thing he made before he made the thing people actually remember. But that completely undersells what Stingray actually accomplished. This was the show where everything clicked. The technology finally matured. The storytelling found its emotional footing. The whole Jerry Anderson style, what he called Supermarionation, became something genuinely special for the first time.
1, 0.
Power to power plant. Commence battle station.
But here's the weird part that I keep thinking about. The show succeeded, then deliberately ended at its peak, and never came back. No sequel series, no revival, no continuation of the story. It exists in this strange space where it's too important to forget, but too brief to dominate anyone's memory. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 things. First, how Stingray represented a massive leap forward in puppet television technology that made everything after it possible. Second, the creative and romantic elements that set it apart from every other Anderson production. And third, why Anderson chose to end the show at its peak and what that decision meant for its legacy. Let me take you back to 1964, when a puppet submarine changed British television forever. The Supermarionation breakthrough. Alright, so to understand Stingray, you have to understand Jerry Anderson and what he was trying to do. Anderson had been making puppet shows since the late 1950s, but here's the thing most people don't realize. He never actually wanted to make puppet shows. What he wanted was to make live-action films, real movies with real actors. That was the dream. But nobody was funding that dream. What Anderson could get funded was children's entertainment with puppets, so he made a deal with himself.
They copied this from the original puppet. I saw it through myself.
If he had to make puppet shows, he was going to make them look as cinematic as humanly possible. He was going to push the medium until it broke. The progression tells the story. Four Feather Falls in 1960, a puppet western. Supercar in 1961, a show about a car that could fly and go underwater. Fireball XL5 in 1962, a space adventure, each one more ambitious than the last, each one pushing the technology further. Anderson developed what he called Supermarionation, which was his trademarked term for a specific set of techniques. Electronic lip-sync technology that moved the puppets' mouths in time with pre-recorded dialogue, detailed miniature sets and vehicles that could be filmed like real locations, multiple camera setups, dramatic lighting, actual cinematic techniques that nobody was applying to puppetry. By the time Stingray came around, Anderson had refined all of this into something genuinely impressive. But the real breakthrough was color. ITC Entertainment, Anderson's distributor, wanted to sell these shows to American networks, and American television was transitioning to color broadcasting. NBC had committed to all-color primetime programming. Shows filmed in color had a massive advantage in the international market, so ITC made the investment. Stingray would be filmed entirely in color, making it the first British television production of any kind to do so. This wasn't cheap. Color film stock cost more. The lighting requirements were more demanding. The sets and costumes had to be designed differently because color revealed flaws that black and white hid. But it worked. The show looked stunning. And it sold internationally like nothing Anderson had made before. The underwater setting was secretly genius for puppetry. Think about it. The biggest problem with marionette work is hiding the strings. That's what breaks the illusion. But underwater, you expect things to look a little floaty. You expect movement to be slightly off. The murky depths, the submarine interiors, the way light moves through water, all of it helped disguise the limitations of the medium. The Stingray submarine itself was a design marvel, sleek, futuristic, unlike any submarine in fiction before it. That vehicle became iconic immediately. Kids wanted toys of it. Adults recognized it as something special, and the production quality across all 39 episodes was feature film level for the time. Detailed miniature work that genuinely still holds up if you watch it today. Practical effects for underwater sequences that were innovative for any production, not just puppet shows. And music by Barry Gray that gave everything legitimate cinematic weight. This was a children's puppet show that refused to accept the limitations of being a children's puppet show, and audiences could feel that ambition in every frame. But Stingray wasn't just a technical achievement. It was also the moment Anderson's shows developed actual heart, the love triangle and the silent woman. Here's what really set Stingray apart from everything else Jerry Anderson made, before or after. It had romance. Real, complicated, never resolved romance that was absolutely central to the show. The main cast was tight. Troy Tempest was your heroic submarine captain. Square jaw, fearless, exactly what you'd expect from a 60s action hero.
Between the two, those two were both in love with Troy Tempest. Lucky old.
Phones was his loyal partner, the guy who handled communications and sonar and provided comic relief. Commander Shore ran WASP headquarters from a hover chair and kept the whole operation running. And then there was Marina. Marina was a princess from an underwater civilization called Pacifica. Troy rescued her from danger, and she became part of the Stingray crew. She was beautiful, she was mysterious, and she couldn't speak. I mean that literally. Marina was completely silent throughout the entire series. Her people communicated telepathically or through some other means that the show was deliberately vague about. But Marina herself never said a single word in 39 episodes. Think about how weird that is for a main character. This isn't a background figure. This is one of the central trio. And she communicates entirely through expression, through gesture, through music cues, and visual storytelling. Now here's where it gets complicated. Atlanta Shore, the commander's daughter, worked at WASP headquarters.
Father, what happened? It didn't explode.
And she was clearly, obviously, painfully in love with Troy Tempest, and Troy seemed to have feelings for both of them. The show never resolved this. It just let the tension exist, episode after episode. Troy would have moments with Marina. Troy would have moments with Atlanta. Atlanta would watch Marina with barely concealed jealousy.
They had one thing in common. They were both very, very attractive. It set up a jealousy between the two.
Marina would observe everything with those silent, knowing eyes. A genuine love triangle in a puppet show for children in 1964. That's surprisingly sophisticated for the era. Marina's silence turned out to be brilliant storytelling, even if it started as a practical limitation. Because she couldn't just tell us what she was thinking or feeling, the Anderson team had to work harder to make her expressive. Everything about her character came through performance and context. The puppet operators had to convey emotion through subtle movement. The composers had to give her musical themes that communicated her inner life. The writers had to construct scenes where her silence meant something, where what she didn't say carried weight. She was mysterious and beautiful and unknowable in a way that a speaking character couldn't have been. The silence made her more compelling, not less. And the show leaned into this hard. The theme song literally spelled it out. Marina, Aqua Marina. What are these strange enchantments that start whenever you're near? The show had a love ballad as part of its opening sequence. That's not typical action-adventure stuff. That's a show telling you up front that romance matters here. Why did this matter for Anderson's trajectory? Because his previous shows were primarily about vehicles and adventure. The human element, well, puppet element, was secondary. Supercar was about the car. Fireball XL5 was about the spaceship. Stingray proved these shows could have emotional stakes, not just action stakes. You could care about the characters as people, not just as operators of cool vehicles. That realization would carry forward into Thunderbirds and everything Anderson made afterward. The show took its characters' feelings seriously. It asked the audience to invest in a love triangle between marionettes, and somehow it worked. So you've got a show that's technically groundbreaking and emotionally sophisticated, a genuine hit that audiences loved and critics respected. The international sales were strong, everything was working, and then Jerry Anderson just ended it, ending at the peak. Stingray ran for 39 episodes across 1964 and 1965, one season. The show was successful by every measure that mattered. ITC was happy. The international sales justified the color investment. Audiences wanted more, and Anderson said no. He wrapped up production, archived the puppets, and moved on. Not canceled, deliberately ended. There's a difference, and it matters. ITC Entertainment came to Anderson with an opportunity. They wanted something bigger, something grander, something that would take everything Stingray had proven and scale it up dramatically. Thunderbirds would be hour-long episodes instead of half-hour. Bigger budget per episode, bigger scale in every dimension. A team of heroes with multiple incredible vehicles. International rescue, saving the world from disasters. The catch was that Anderson couldn't do both. The production demands of Supermarionation were too intense. These shows required his personal attention at every level. Making Thunderbirds meant not making anything else. So he chose. He chose to leave Stingray behind and chase the bigger prize. Was this the right call? Commercially, there's no question. Thunderbirds became a phenomenon. It's the show Jerry Anderson is most remembered for. The merchandising empire, the cultural impact, the legacy that persists to this day. Thunderbirds overshadowed everything that came before it. If Anderson had stuck with Stingray for another few seasons, would Thunderbirds have happened? Maybe not. Maybe not with the same resources, the same timing, the same impact, but something was lost in that choice. And if you love Stingray, you can feel it. Stingray had a specific charm that Thunderbirds didn't replicate. The underwater world with its alien civilizations and mysterious depths, the romance that was central to every episode, the slightly smaller, more intimate scale that let characters breathe. Marina never got her story resolved. We never learned the full truth about Pacifica, about her people, about why she stayed with Troy. Troy never chose between Marina and Atlanta. The love triangle just stopped mid-story, frozen forever. There's something melancholy about that. These characters exist in suspension, their emotional arcs permanently incomplete. 39 episodes of building towards something, and then nothing. This would become a pattern in Anderson's career. Shows would succeed, prove their concept, build an audience, and then end abruptly, so Anderson could chase the next bigger thing. Captain Scarlet ran for one season. Joe 90 ran for one season. UFO got 2 seasons before Anderson moved to space, 1999. The man was always looking forward, always chasing the next technical achievement, the next creative challenge. Staying with something that was working wasn't in his nature. Stingray was the first time he left a hit behind. It wouldn't be the last. The beautiful footnote. So where does Stingray fit in the Jerry Anderson legacy? What do you do with a show that was groundbreaking, but brief, important, but overshadowed? Stingray occupies this strange position where everyone who knows Anderson's work acknowledges its importance, but it's never the first show people mention. That's Thunderbirds. Maybe Captain Scarlet for the people who prefer their Anderson a bit darker. Stingray is respected, but not quite remembered. The technical legacy is undeniable. Everything that made Thunderbirds possible was proven with Stingray first. Color production could work. Sophisticated miniature filming could sustain a series. Emotional storytelling with puppets could connect with audiences. Stingray was the proof of concept. It demonstrated that Anderson's vision could actually work at a high level. Thunderbirds was the execution of that proof at massive scale. That's valuable. That's important. But the proof of concept rarely gets the same glory as the big execution. Nobody remembers the prototype. They remember the product that changed everything. Marina deserves special recognition in any discussion of this show's legacy. A major character who never speaks a single word of dialogue, who communicates entirely through presence and implication. That's a surprisingly modern storytelling choice. It required the audience to actively engage, to read body language and context and musical cues. Marina remains one of the most memorable Anderson characters despite her silence. Maybe because of her silence. There's something haunting about her that the more straightforward characters don't have. What about revivals? Unlike some Anderson properties, Stingray never got a proper continuation. Thunderbirds has been revived multiple times. The 2004 live-action film that everyone pretends doesn't exist. The 2015 CGI series Thunderbirds Are Go that actually worked pretty well. Captain Scarlet got a full CGI series in the 2000s. Stingray got some development attempts that went nowhere. The underwater setting is expensive to do well and easy to do badly. The love triangle is harder to market to modern kids than International Rescue's straightforward heroism. And there's always a bigger Anderson property that gets revival priority. So Stingray stays in the past, perfectly preserved in amber, never diluted by bad sequels, never ruined by misguided CGI reboots, never allowed to overstay its welcome, because it never got the chance. There's something valuable about that, honestly. The show exists as exactly what it was. 39 episodes of genuine craft and ambition and heart. No decline in quality, no jumping the shark, no embarrassing later seasons that fans pretend don't exist. Just a beautiful, brief moment in television history that proved something important and then gracefully stepped aside. So what do we take away from Stingray? First, technical innovation enables creative innovation. The color filming, the underwater setting, the advanced puppetry techniques, none of that was just showing off. It gave the creative team tools to tell stories they couldn't tell before. The technology enabled the art. You can't separate them. Second, knowing when to leave matters. Anderson chose to end Stingray at its peak, rather than run it into the ground chasing diminishing returns. That took discipline. The show's legacy stays clean because he didn't overstay the welcome. How many shows can say that? Third, the stepping stone often gets forgotten in the shadow of what it enabled. Stingray made Thunderbirds possible. Stingray proved the concepts that Thunderbirds would execute at scale. But Thunderbirds gets the glory, the revivals, the cultural memory. The show that proves something can work rarely gets the same credit as the show that takes that proof and runs with it. Thanks for watching. But here's the thing. Stingray isn't the only show that ended at its peak to make way for something bigger. If you want to see another series that got left behind when its creator decided to chase greater ambitions, click the video on your screen. I'll break down another show that proved the concept but didn't get to reap the rewards. See you there.